Hello and good morning, everyone. This is 11 o'clock Sunday morning meditation followed by talk from the Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra. Thank you for everyone joining me here on Zoom and on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you. Please take your seat and bring your attention and good intention and very good mindfulness and forgetting what you will do in these first 30 minutes of meditation so that you learn to keep your mind very calm and focused and serene and attentive to free the mind of all commotions and activities, cravings and wantings and various unrelated incoherent thoughts, but try to remain focused. So we'll do the prayers first. Refuge and generation of the altruistic motivation, that we're going to do this not for just me, not just for now, not just to make the body feel particular sensations. It's mainly for the mind and the future and for the benefit of others. If we are calm and focused and have the mind in our hand, we will be careful how to be of use with other sentient beings. So with that kind of altruistic and futuristic motivation, we will do the prayers. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Ete Bhavachu Ajendala Aishare Padavatu Endabu Dadama Sangha Aitere Ete Bhavachu Ajendala Aishare Padavatu Endabu Dadama Sangha Aitere Vidyaladama Bhavachu Ajendala Aishare Padavatu. May all beings have happiness, a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a power of happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, of those near. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a power of happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, of those near. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a power of happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those never. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. So now we will do the meditation. Please observe for S, the stillness of your posture, as well as your intention and sincere motivation. As I said, not just do for me and now and the body, but do it for the benefit of many sentient beings until they reach Buddhahood. And with that sincere altruistic motivation, then you also keep your attention very serene to the three techniques. We will focus firstly on the posture, secondly on the forward counting of the qualified round breathing, and third is reverse counting of super qualified round breathing. And then you do these techniques mindfully without forgetting the techniques. So with this I will use the gong to time the 3 lots of 10 minutes, and so you observe the techniques of one-pointed calm abiding meditation. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. We just concluded the meditation. So, welcome again. I'm going to give few series of talks on this topic, Buddhism and with beliefs. Of course, this is mainly given on the basis of asserting the importance of understanding the traditional Buddhist beliefs without throwing baby with the bath water. Quite a lot of modern searchers are scheming and just pick and choose and take some and not take others. While they are completely free to do that, it's important that they are not missing the main points by doing that. So it is, of course, Buddhist people in Buddhist countries do not have to be reminded what their beliefs are. And only problem most people is they're not faithfully able to follow them as much as they would like to. They don't choose to intellectually, arrogantly, as if they can do without some of the fundamental beliefs, and they can just pick and choose and practice Buddhism without any beliefs. That kind of attitude is lurking in this. I could notice that, and I think, of course, that's their freedom. No Buddhist teachings or teachers or tradition will force anybody to follow everything according to every Buddhist culture and traditions, because certain Buddhist beliefs and cultures are practiced in some countries and not in others, So some of them are largely colored and influenced by the specific culture and language and ethnicity. This definitely, there are certain aspects of Buddhist customs and language and tradition that can be sort of left unused if people do not feel comfortable. But some of the fundamental beliefs and teachings could not be. So that's why the Buddhist teachers, Tibetan or others alike, who are raised in Buddhist tradition cultures, living in the West, of course, has some role and duty to explain these things correctly to everybody, so that people who are keenly following Buddhism and its teaching, its practices, do not sort of fall into this on again, off again kind of childish, short-sighted views about Buddhism. Firstly, Buddhism is based on teaching of Buddha, enlightened one, and it's not should not be regarded as Gautama. I've seen some people now refer to Buddha only as Gautama. They don't regard him as enlightened one. They think he's a Gautama. They call him Gautama. The secular Buddhists don't call Buddha even the enlightened one. They call him Gautama. That's it. The Gautama is a very derogatory term by Buddhists to call Buddha, because prior to Buddha was enlightened, he was known by his family, Shakyamuni or Gautama, Prince Siddhartha. But once he got enlightened, he was referred to as fully enlightened one, Samyak Sambuddha, perfectly enlightened one. And so firstly, when we talk about beliefs, it may refer to doctrine. It may refer to dogma. It may refer to some of the fundamental tenet and philosophical ideas and views, and essentially the teachings themselves. So when we say beliefs, it doesn't really mean you blindly believe in some things without knowing what they are. So from that point of view, beliefs got a little bit of a drawback, thinking that people believe without knowing what they are, type of thing. So in the Buddhism, it is mainly Buddhist fundamentals of Buddhist teachings. So I'm going to talk about a few fundamentals today, how important these are for Buddhists to remember these and practice them, honor them. And the first is the role of the Buddha. The role of the Buddha is seen as the fully enlightened one, not just as a philosophical teacher who invented some theories and taught them. This is not. Buddha is the one who's realized truth, who's fully enlightened one. Therefore, Buddha is called Samyak Sambuddha. Every time we talk about Buddha, we see them as not as a human being. We see as a Buddha as perfectly enlightened one. Yes, Buddha was prior to becoming enlightened, he was a human being. He was a king, but he renounced the king. He renounced the worldly life of a prince, the Siddhartha and Gautama, and then he became enlightened. He did so through practice of discipline, meditation, and wisdom. So the Buddha is believed as one of the three objects of refuge. So all Buddhists have beliefs to take refuge in the Triple Gem. Now, if all Buddhists, whether it's in Sri Lanka or in Laos or Thailand or Japan or Tibet or Mongolia, they always start Buddhist. Anything they do with Buddhists, they take refuge. So that's a Buddhist fundamental Buddhist belief is one who has refuge in the Triple Gem. And one who has a refuge in the Triple Gem, first is the Buddha gem. Buddha is a gem, it's an enlightened one. It's not just another human being. Another human being is not a gem. And as far as ultimate quality is concerned. But gem is very rare. So Buddha is a fully enlightened one. And therefore we should always refer to the Buddha as Samyak Sambuddha, perfect enlightened one. Always join our hands at the heart, wherever. Buddha is one of the 6 objects that one needs to recollect and meditate on. So that's why the proliferation of Buddha statues, Buddhist rock carvings and frescoes and sculptures of the Buddha is everywhere, because Buddhists believe the Buddha as Buddha's holy image is the most worthy objects to remember and pay homage to. And so it is not idol worship. So some people might think, if they think Buddha, they worship to Buddha, bow down to Buddha, they're worshipping idol. No, we are worshipping ideal. He is the ideal human being who attained enlightenment, is Buddha. So therefore, refuge in the Buddha or respect to the Buddha as fully enlightened one is a fundamental Buddhist belief. And one who sees the Buddha as another human being and refer to him as a Gautama and not fully enlightened one, not take refuge to the Triple Gem before Buddhist activities are not Buddhist beliefs. That's anti-Buddhist belief, because not taking refuge in the Buddha means not taking refuge in the Dharma. And and what is the taking refuge? The Sangha. And probably even the friendship people have with the fellow practitioners are not really true refuge object. Even in the Sangha are Arhats and Bodhisattvas. The fellow practitioners are just companions. They are not refuge object. So when we say 3 refuge object, it is the Buddha refuge, or Buddha who is the refuge object as the doctor, Dharma which is the refuge object, which is the medicine, Sangha who is the nurses and carers and who help us to recover. So the Buddha is the fully enlightened one who endows 3 specific qualities, which is omniscient, the knowledge, and compassion, and power, the qualities with which he blesses and benefits the people. So all Buddhists, therefore, always have a Buddha image put in a high elevated place. And if they come into the room, they always take the shoes off, and they at least do three bow downs, and then take refuge before they do any meditation or prayers or ceremonies or whatever ritual. They always take refuge in the triple gem, of which the Buddha is the first gem. And why they value the Buddha gem so much is because they found Buddha's teaching, the Dharma. Some of the fundamental teachings of the Buddha help the people to recover themselves from sickness of selfishness and arrogance and righteousness and judgment and greed and ill will and all of that. They realize they're all tormented by these afflictive emotions. When they learn to listen to the teachings and they comprehend the teachings and they adopt the discipline and to meditate, and they gain the realization, they gain wisdom, and then they know how to reconstitute their mind, and they become much more well. They're much more restored of their own goodness to be kind and compassionate and tolerant towards other sentient beings. Previously, without hearing the Dharma, they didn't have that. So they realized Dharma is the true medicine. So therefore they take refuge in the Dharma. They honor the Dharma so much. And then, of course, who taught them the Dharma is the Sangha, Sangha. And even though there is the only conventional Sangha, they know it is the Buddhist belief that the Sangha is the only living community that has actually held the Dharma together. So any Buddhist congregation there is, whether it's minimum of 4 members, whether it, if possible, would be good to have both fully ordained monk, fully ordained nun, and a devotee layman and laywoman. If there is all of these 4, it's considered to be Sangha. That Sangha is a community that actually honors the teachings of the Buddha, from which they are all gaining lots of benefit and realization, and they all are learning to practice loving kindness and compassion and tolerance and forgiveness and understanding and non-judgment. All of this they gain from the Dharma, and then they become even more indebted to the Buddha, because if the Buddha, the full enlightenment, had not practiced 3 uncountable eons as a bodhisattva in many forms and capacities, many different lives, had he not done all of that legwork for many uncountable eons, he would have not become the historical Buddha. So therefore, Buddha is a very rare, it's one who has accomplished all the merit and virtues for many, many eons as a bodhisattva, only become enlightened. So to refer to him merely as a Gautama is disrespectful. It's against Buddhist belief to treat the Buddha as another person, so that they shouldn't call themselves even Buddhists, whether secular or not. They don't. The Buddha has to be always. It's Buddhist belief that Buddha has to be, even just to think of his one quality, bow down towards him, walk towards him, is already amazing merit. So a Buddhist must have this kind of belief to honor the Buddha unconditionally, and not treat him as some kind of a dry philosopher or something of that nature. So Buddha is completely regarded as a fully enlightened one. Now, if we do not know what a fully enlightened one is, because we don't know enough. That's the problem. It's not because Buddha is not fully enlightened. If we haven't seen Buddha's compassion, it's not because Buddha is not compassionate, because we haven't actually have the faith. We didn't have the actual Buddhist belief with which we didn't practice Buddha Dharma with. If we lack the Buddhist beliefs in the faith in the Buddha, we usually say we need lucid faith, we need aspirational faith, and we need trusting faith. And so when we say the lucid, means we have to listen to the teachings to know clearly what the qualities of the Buddha are, and then recognize them for what they are, and then aspire to achieve even small qualities like that by ourselves. And then have little trust, even though it's not quite happening just yet, but still we believe that in the end we will. So that kind of beliefs is required. It's not a blind faith, but it's a trusting faith. So Buddhists have beliefs, okay? Buddhists have faith. So don't ever think Buddhism is not a religion. Buddhism has no belief, as is a dry kind of a philosophical points of view. To see that is an anti-Buddhism, because Buddhism has beliefs such as honoring the Buddha with utmost respect and refuge. So refuge in the Buddha is first and most important belief of Buddhist. You will see everywhere from small villages in Sri Lanka to Burma to Thailand to Tibet or Japan, how much those people who have been practicing Buddhism for those many centuries, how much they honor the Buddha. Now, if we cannot learn those things because these Asians are doing that, because it's their culture, it's our arrogance. That's not enabling us. Honoring the Buddha is the antidote to the arrogance. Bowing down to the Buddha is an antidote to arrogance. It is not that we are subscribing and adopting some Asian culture or something. The people who really know the Buddha's quality, they would do anything if their culture permits to do any kind of way of showing respect. So it's if we learned from Thai or Burmese or Japanese or Tibetan teachers, we just follow them, don't we? I mean, that's what most of you are doing that, because you don't even question why we shouldn't pay respect to the Buddha. So to refer to the Buddha merely as a Gautama and not fully enlightened, it definitely is Buddhism without belief. People do that. Now, Buddhism with beliefs will honor the Buddha utmost. If they have some gold, if they have some silver, they will paint the Buddha images with the gold. They will donate, they will contribute anything to have a Buddha image, the holy image, knowing it has very amazing energy and kind of passive benefit. Just being in your home or somewhere, it bless the environment, it bless the mind and consciousness of the people. This is very fully, this is Buddhist beliefs. These fundamental Buddhist beliefs. They even take statues out of the temples or relics out of the temples once a year. They take around the field and valley in order to sort of spread the range of the blessings of the holy image to the land and water and soil and environment and the wild animals. All of that's Buddhist belief. So without Buddhist belief, such Buddhist beliefs around the Buddha is crucial. Before we talk about actual teachings themselves, how much worthy of believing they are and practicing they are. The reason people find it very difficult to follow some of the Buddhist beliefs is because they don't have the patience. They don't have the actual studious quality of a student. They are not suitable vessels themselves. That's the problem. It's not that Buddhism doesn't have beliefs to be practiced. It's because there's no suitable vessels. That is either the pot is broken, or it's leaking, or it's dirty, or it's put upside down. That's why Buddhism without beliefs, people can't follow the basic beliefs. It's because they are not suitable vessels. But that's why we have to talk about how to have a pot that is not upside down, how to make sure the pot is not leaking, how to make sure the pot is not dirty. Now, people who are quite well versed in some of the fundamental Buddhist teachings but could not practice as a belief definitely is pot with dirty pot. It's a dirty pot. It's dirty of arrogance, intellectual arrogance, or whatever the case might be. And of course, they're entitled to stay like that, but they might have throw the baby with the bathwater. This is what I'm concerned, because life is very, very precious in Buddhism says, and this life, if one were to act like that, one is practicing wrong view. Wrong view is one of the the last of the 10 non-virtuous deeds. And according to Buddhist teaching, the wrong view is a cause of bad rebirth in the next life. Maybe people with Buddhism without beliefs don't even think there is a life hereafter. So probably it doesn't occur to them because they can't believe. Buddha himself taught very clearly that he has numerous past lives, and he told all the stories called Jatakamalas. And not only these are told written stories, all the Buddhist monuments from rock carvings in India in 2nd century A before BC, all the way up till 12th century AD, all the statues, temple, rock carvings are all depicting the very Jatakamala stories of the past life stories of the Buddha, during which he was a young prince who fed his body to a tigress, during which he was a patient buffalo, and so on, a woodpecker. All of those stories Buddha told is a fundamental teachings on the existence of many lives before and after this life. And so therefore to think there is no life before this life or there is no in the future is definitely Buddhism without beliefs. It's not even Buddhism without belief. It's without belief. It's a wrong view holder. We don't even call Buddhism without belief. Of course, Buddhism holds always believes. It is wrong view holders. Wrong view holders think there is no life after death and there are no lives before. Buddha himself took great liberty to tell all his past life stories in order to instill faith in the minds of the people that he said, oh, in that life I was such and such, I was the woodpecker, Shariputra was this, Moggallanaputra was this, my mother was this. He told these things in order to open our limited closed-mindedness. And we also would like to think, oh, no wonder what might have been my such and such in these lives, in my previous lives. What must have been the dynamic relations that we didn't quite finish in past life, that we end up being a mother and a son or the husband and a wife or whatever it is. Then people become a little bit more cautious of how they may treat each other and understand and accept each other. So all of these teachings Buddha gave about past lives and future lives, we believe in the Buddha. Because we believe in the Buddha as enlightened one, we don't have any difficulty. Now, if we don't believe in the Buddha as fully enlightened one, then we think all of the stories are fake or fictions, or maybe another sort of another writings of the J.K. Rowling's. Maybe we think maybe we will believe in these stories we read. Buddhists believe all the Jatakamala stories. That's a fundamental Buddhist belief, because they believe in the historical Buddha. Buddha himself is the one who told his past life stories. Nobody else told the past life stories of Buddha, because only enlightened one can remember and recognize and verify and teach. So the belief in the Buddha and his role is extraordinarily important in Buddhism. Second is when we talk about the beliefs, is we regard the teachings more important than the Buddha. This is very important. Teaching is more important than Buddha in our practical terms. If teachings actually enable us to if we understand the teaching very well, then we have no hesitation to honor the Buddha. The reason why people couldn't practice Buddhism with beliefs is because they don't understand the teachings. Because they didn't understand the teachings, therefore they fall short of believing in the Buddha as fully enlightened one. People who understand the teachings of the Buddha, they have no doubt but faith in knowing that Buddha is fully enlightened one, because of his teachings are so true and so amazingly true. If we practice them, it hits the mark. It doesn't miss the mark. So because of validating the teaching's authenticity, then there is no doubt about validating the enlightened one who taught it. So those who could not practicing Buddhism as beliefs because they don't understand the teachings well enough. Maybe theoretically they do, but they haven't actually meditated. They haven't realized any of the truth of the teachings. If they have validated the truth of the teachings, such as impermanence and merits of loving kindness practice and forgiveness, and non-violence, and if they look at those things, they can see how true and how necessary it is for us to adhere to practice of non-violence and loving kindness and forgiveness. All of those teachings the Buddha gave will go and very much validate the Buddha, and then we become ever thankful to the Buddha. So therefore Buddha said, actual refuge is the Dharma. He threw the Dharma as the more important refuge than the Buddha. Why? Because when you do practice Dharma, when you have true refuge in Dharma, then it goes and revalidates the Buddha, even if you have any doubts, Of course, most people do not have doubt in the Buddha because they have Buddhism with beliefs, Even say one start with the Buddhism, practicing, learning Buddhism without sort of fixed views and beliefs because one has no Buddhist background, which is quite open anyway. Particularly people who are studying Buddhism from non-Buddhist background. Of course, you have to start with the fairly open mind, I met the other day a young Australian man who has a Nepalese wife and she's a Buddhist. They have a little child, 2 months old. And the girl is a Sherpa. She wanted the child to be blessed with the baby Buddhist blessings. And then the husband said, "Oh, I'm very open to it. I'm not a religious person, but I'm very open to it." So like that. So people have to start with something. How does the teaching actually make sense and how true it is? When you know how true the teaching is, then of course you don't doubt about the Buddha, the enlightened one who taught it, of course, and therefore you go and revalidate it. And that's why the Buddha was so wise to think that Dharma is the more important refuge object than the Buddha. Why? Dharma is what we have to practice. When we practice it, and when we truly believe in it, you cannot but go and revalidate the belief in the Buddha and have no hesitation but to accept the Buddha as a fully enlightened one. And because of that, then we become even more thankful to the living Sangha. Sangha is the third refuge object. Then we realize, this wonderful teaching could not have reached in my generation had not been there this unbroken transmissional lineage. And therefore, all the Buddhist traditions have very strong culture to honor their teacher and teachers, all the way what His Holiness Dalai Lama nowadays call the Nalanda Buddhism. His Holiness is very, very wise to say that, because otherwise Tibetan think that there are different schools, different lineages, Sanskrit, Pali, all that. They don't realize that we go all the way back to the India where the Dharma was taught and practiced and propagated for 1400 years, And they only towards the end of 12th century did India lost Buddhism. Prior to that, for good 1500 years, Buddhism was practiced and taught in India for unbroken 14th century. That's a heck lot of time, So we have to therefore respect that, and then go back all the way from the 14th century, then go to the historical Shakyamuni Buddha, and then show in deep gratitude to the Buddha. So therefore, Buddhists who believe in the Dharma, who know that how true the Dharma is, they could not possibly not include the Buddha as their utmost objects of refuge and respect. So the Buddhists believe in the Buddha, and the Buddhists believe in the Dharma. How the Buddhists believe in the Dharma? It says, don't leave the books of the Dharma on the ground or floor or on a bare floor or under under some shelf or something, put in a high elevated place, because the contents of the books are Dharma, the words of the Buddha and teachings. So therefore we have the Buddhist belief to keep the books and sacred texts in a high elevated place, because they are the words of the Buddha, because they contain true teachings. So Buddhist belief of putting the Buddha images and holy scriptures high, and regard them as words of the Buddha, and because of that we do not treat them as ordinary books. And so that's why the Buddhist belief of even bringing out the holy scriptures, carry them on the shoulders, on the back, going around the valley, and taking on procession of the holy scriptures. They believe that the holy words of the Buddha that are contained in the text, they're carrying this out into the field, will bless the environment and places and people. All these beliefs are very, very, very fundamentally important. So the refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the Dharma, and then refuge in the Sangha is the very important one. Refuge in the Sangha is the where we render special form of etiquette and respect to the Sangha. Now the Sangha members, we have lay men Sangha, lay women Sangha, ordained monk, ordained non-Sangha members. All of these are by seniority of the age, or seniority of the precepts, or seniority of their knowledge. We always should respect someone senior than ourselves by age or knowledge or qualification. When we do that, because there's always, we might be youngest at right now maybe, but there will be a time we will be among the older group, and so everybody go through that. It's not so much that people who teach demand respect to them. That's not the case. So some people misunderstand. They think that the respect the Sangha and Sangha is Buddhist belief is just to ask people to impose this strong kind of reverence to them for their own benefit. People might think like that's not the case. The respect to the Sangha is a strong Buddhist belief that in Asian cultures, some Asian cultures, not all of them by the way, they offer food to the Sangha members. They cook the most choicest varieties of food. Early in the morning, 4 o'clock, they cook 3, 4, 5 different dishes. They offer to the Sangha, and they themselves wouldn't even think of eating even one morsel of food until all the Sangha has been completely offered food, and they would not even think of themselves eating. So this is the kind of Buddhist belief, for instance. So now there are, in some situations, of course, the kind of a certain strict rituals of certain Buddhist cultures that spend a lot of time in a feeding kind of feeding ritual, sometimes might not allow time to do that. So therefore, it is practically adaptable, but not out of disrespect to the beliefs, but out of practicality of the things. Doesn't mean you disrespect that, you know. So the monks might be sought permission. Well, although this is your tradition, can we also eat at the same time? All that. So it's that kind of practice can be done, but thinking that is just not practical, that's not cannot be done, and then disrespecting the Sangha and how we honor the Sangha altogether, and then disregarding altogether, then we are actually disrespecting the culture and the tradition. And the culture and traditions are not observed, then we don't have a good student. That's exactly the pot with the dirty pot. When the pot is dirty, nothing is right for him. Either the tradition is too demanding, or the culture, or the language, everything is not appropriate for him. He couldn't be bothered to be a student. He wanted everything his way, and therefore rebel. So Buddhism without belief people are actually, they say they don't follow any traditional culture. No, that's the problem, exactly. Without following one traditional Buddhist school or traditional culture, you wouldn't have Buddhism. You can have Buddhism like the people in the Madan Blavatsky and all the Theosophist people who study Buddhism, who think they had some kind of a entity called dual core Tibetan who came from the sky and taught them. You can have those sort of tradition, but actual living traditions you don't have. You don't actually. You don't have any. You don't want to follow anybody. So therefore, Buddhism with beliefs follows our living tradition. Living tradition with the living teachers, and teachers, they must all have to be traceable under which teacher, which lineages, and what you have been raised, and we honor them, we respect them, and so therefore not respecting the particular tradition, whether it's a Theravadan or Mahayana or Zen or Vajrayana or whatever it is, every single person who is a Buddhist, some of us may have the richness of having exposed to a number of traditions. So therefore we are quite able to adapt whoever we mingle with. We just do as them. When you go there on certain festival ceremony, you just follow them. You don't hesitate saying that I don't follow any of this. You just go where there as a suitable vessel should. Suitable vessel means the vessel has to be a certain cupness of the cup. If the cup itself could not hold anything because it's either dirty or it's leaking, that's exactly the problem. How can you follow Buddhism with our beliefs? Because you don't have Buddhism, let alone if you have no belief, there is no Buddhism for you. So that's why it's important that if you study under any Buddhist traditions or lineages, that one should always respect them. One should always honor them. We should be thankful that they have preserved these many centuries and teaching us the way, however novice like we are. Always think that we are more novice than we are arrogant kind of judges. So it's very important. The Buddhists with the beliefs have to honor the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. If we practice Buddhism with the belief, we must honor the tradition and traditions. But having said this, I must say that even the Asian Buddhists themselves, why they're very faithful to Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but they don't honor or respect the other Buddhist traditions things as valid. That's the problem with the tradition. So therefore one should be very careful not to become lineage-centric, lineage-centric or tradition-centric Buddhists, because some of them, like some of the Theravadins think there's no Vinaya in Tibetan Buddhism, for instance. That's their wrong view. They haven't really studied any Tibetan Buddhist traditions. You can see there's thousands of monks. They are always practicing to their best level of training as far as they can, and they all study Vinaya. Of course, many inter-traditional has certain limited views, and they may say our tradition is the only way. If you think that kind of way of the traditions of Buddhism is a little divisive, there's a grain of truth in that. That's not the fault of the tradition, that's the fault of the people. That the tradition themselves are still good, Tradition themselves are still good. That body of the tradition has preserved the Dharma all this far. And within each of the Buddhist tradition, if individuals have very narrow-minded views saying, our schools, our tradition is only one, we don't follow them, we don't endorse them, that kind of view does not represent Buddhism. And so if people are put off by the too many traditions, ethnicity, language, and cultures, who are not really honoring the others, and they become to think theirs is only superior and best, if you are put off by that, there's a grain of truth that. But that's not to do with the tradition. That is to do with the individuals, people by people. People have lots of flaws. Most people are unsuitable cups. Unsuitable cups. And so nothing really surprising to see if you are a little bit discouraged by the divisive and fragmented nature of Buddhist culture and tradition. It's mainly because of the the language, ethnicity, culture are so different. Therefore, the outer cultural form of Buddhist differences should not be the cause for oneself to think that these are strange beliefs. I don't want to follow that. I rather want to follow a Western way or my way, because this Buddhism has barely made an inroad in the West. Has not really established at all very well. Because it hasn't even passed 1 century. In Tibet, it took 3 centuries before it became formally established. Nowadays, due to technology and speed, maybe we are establishing much quickly, if possible, because people are more literate. But the actual tradition of beliefs of Buddhist practices takes many more years than we think we should afford. So therefore, fundamental beliefs in Buddhism is refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. When you have this refuge in these 3, whether you're Japanese, Buddhist or whatever, you can see there's amazing quality about that tradition in its own right. And I don't see any problem, but I admire every single traditional culture where they do it. How in their own way, how Dharma has been preserved so beautifully in their own way, however different they may do with different other tradition, but how they have preserved is because they have that Sangha. They have that tradition that is held by the Sangha, and the whole collective Sangha has kept the Dharma in that culture preserves that many years. So therefore, it's a Buddhist belief to support, endorse, and respect the Sangha as a whole community. Whether one is always able to follow, understand, practice their way or not is a totally different matter. Yeah, you can't be doing all the Tibetan way of practicing or Thai way of practicing, but those are, it will take time for itself to adapt to your liking when your practice is more matured. When the cup has become totally clean and not leaking, the liquid it will hold inside will taste good. But first the cup has to be free of those impure factors. Those impure factors are almost developing a wrong view to the extent of not so. For instance, we always start. It's a Buddhist belief to start always with the refuge prayer at the beginning, and at that end the dedication merits, and something in the middle. Now, if we wanted to take that away, and then have some kind of dry meetings with everybody sitting in a circle, and telling each other how was your meditation, how was your realization, that. Of course, you can do that. I've been to theosophical meetings in the 1980s, and as well as many other seekers, and they all do that, which is really good because they have to start somewhere. But where Buddhist traditions or temples they always do Buddham Saranam Gacchami, and Tibetan would Sangye Chodan, so they're exactly same, different language, And I don't know whether Japanese do that or not. Japanese seem to always go straight into Heart Sutra, which I really admire. They know that you just have to go straight into the main point. So such beliefs will differ. Some people will do that, others people will do differently. But these minor differences are not because they are not in uniformity. It doesn't mean they are incorrect. They just have different culture and tradition, and it will also adapt and develop as we go. In Buddhism, in say 200 years later in Australia, would have adapted itself, And of course, people are still, Theravadins are very, very orthodox. They don't want to use any language than Pali. So for instance, it's their belief that they should only say the prayers in Pali. As you had in Christianity, they only say the say the service is only in Latin. It's only maybe a couple of hundred years, maybe not even that, since people have been doing all the masses and church services in other languages. It has taken time to. So that's why there will be a time when the meetings and tradition practice, when they do, they will be done in a language in which their tradition has preserved. For instance, quite a lot of majority of Tibetan Buddhist centers in the West, they all do the prayers mostly in Tibetan, and they are phonetics. They all chant in Tibetan, and you can see that. I have seen some of the really Tibetan tradition centers, and not many of them know any Tibetan, but they're very, very faithful. They believe they should stay in prayers, whatever their teachers taught them to do, which is incredible patience. And this is exactly, they believe that they should accept and honor the practice they have been given and taught by the teachers. If the cup matures and clean later on, I'm sure those prayers can be done in English when we have the standardized version of them in English, when everybody can chant in English quite sort of, I would say, maturely. But I have been, for instance, said when we do everything in Tibetan, quite a few of the monks, when they travel with the High Lamas, they say, "Why don't you do in Tibetan? It sounds so funny in English." They say, "It sounds so un-Tibetan that you are chanting these things in a tune of Tibetan, but in English doesn't sound authentic. You should do in Tibetan." They've been telling me that. But of course I'm the only Tibetan, I'm the only Tibetan. So usually I don't have to consult any other Tibetan. So when I'm only Tibetan with everybody else is Westerners, English speakers. So I'm always chanting in English, in order to make people feel a little bit so the cups doesn't break quickly. So that people are actually able to sit through and follow the ritual or puja. At least they know what they're saying, so to speak. Which is exactly what these Buddhism without belief people actually want. They think everything should be spoon-fed. Everything should be so spoon-fed they don't have to actually think anything. But of course it will take time. And so that's why the point of today's talk is about how to make sure that some of the fundamental Buddhist practices, like the refuge and the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, as tradition, if you don't follow that, then there's no Buddhism. You can have a class in the year 11, year 12, they talk about Buddhism. Yeah, you can do that sort of thing. Yeah, they don't need to have any beliefs. They just have to look at an educational thing, and there's no requirement to practice with the beliefs. But people who truly have received and listened and heard teachings, they truly have reason to believe in the Dharma. They actually know it's true. They know it's good for them. They know it is a way of life. They know it's a philosophy. It has beliefs. It has tenets. It has doctrine. And it has also, the main doctrine is a middle way. So remember, middle way means that, yes, even some rigid sounding Buddhist ideas or strict sounding things, they should be all adapted on a middle way. So not becoming too cut through, saying if you can accept it, accept it. Otherwise, you just totally decide that we can practice Buddhism but without any beliefs. It is not middle way. That you have to accept everything 100% as they said. That is also not middle way. So middle way means that one should be not falling into either extremes. They're not saying you must believe everything blindly without knowing what they are. So if that's the case, that's definitely not right. Buddha himself encouraged people to examine, check, and see for themselves and verify and validate it through their own experience, and then follow, and then adopt them as your beliefs, as your faith, as your principles. And then the whole teachings of the four seals of Dharma and the fundamental teachings, they themselves become much more sensible and much more a philosophy, much more a way of thinking, and how one lives and how one deals with the death and how one deals with the sufferings and the problems. And they become very practical guides. They're not just Buddhism without beliefs. Even Buddhism without belief is a belief, remember that. so there's no way around having a no belief, because to think that Buddhism can be practiced without any belief is a kind of a belief. But whether that is a kind of a acceptable belief according to Buddhism, probably that's a wrong belief, which is called wrong view. So wrong view is unfortunately is not a belief. It's a wrong belief. It's a mistaken conception, we call it. It's a mistaken conceptions. So Buddha is trying to teach us correct conceptions to rectify all the mistaken conceptions, and therefore how to make a difference. So Buddhism with beliefs is very important from the point of view of not just preserving cultures, but preserving the authenticity of the teachings, so that people who are studying and practicing are not watering down the teachings by compromising as if they're too smart, or they're too culturally or linguistically, politically not convenient to follow the traditions and refuge and traditional practices. That means they are not Buddhists, full stop. And then nobody is forcing anybody to become Buddhist. But if you are, you need to know these fundamental beliefs that goes part and parcel of being a Buddhist. Now, we don't mean that people have to be uniformly practicing and behaving. Everybody has their own ways. But to blatantly reject the Buddhist beliefs and yet practice Buddhism is not benefiting oneself, but actually implanting doubts in the mind of other people. So therefore, Buddhism definitely is a practice of spirituality with beliefs. And that fundamentally starts with the refuge in the Buddha, the enlightened one, the Dharma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the noble friends. When you have refuge in the Triple Gem, then it already starts with the beliefs. And we will elaborate some of the fundamental fundamentals or tenets or the ideas of Buddhist teachings, of course, later on, because some of them are like concept of reincarnation and law of karma and all of these things. There are certain things we can or cannot possibly fathom all. If we can't fathom or cannot understand reincarnation, doesn't mean the Buddhism can be practiced without beliefs. It's just because you can't comprehend. So it's good to know that what you can comprehend. It doesn't mean the object itself is not believable. It's just you can't comprehend. If you are blind and touching the tail of an elephant, and then asked by somebody how the elephant looks like, and you will say elephant, it looks like the tail. Yeah, because that's all you know. Because you're only touching the tail. So it's not the fault of you, it's just fault of not having the eyes. So therefore, until we discover the eye to see the whole elephant, of course you will think the tail is the elephant, looks like the tail of elephant. One doesn't have a complete picture of it. So that's why it is important. The Buddhism definitely is a faith, has a dogma, has rituals, has traditions, has principles, but at the same time, most important aspect of all the Buddhist beliefs is a middle way. Even if you think that you know this particular, still one need to adapt it according to your level of practice and not impose it on either to yourself or onto others, because what you can or what you cannot practice. So it is important that that Buddhism is definitely regarded as one of the faith. There's no way, no way. If Australian government or American government don't think Buddhism is without belief, they wouldn't include as a religion in your census. So, so what are you trying to fill? What are you going to? What are you going to fill in? If you're Buddhist, you're going to say I'm Buddhist without beliefs. What are you going to do? I'm Buddhist but without beliefs. They say, what the hell are you talking about? They wouldn't understand what you're talking about, for instance. You might as well say, I don't believe in anything, no religion. Maybe you put no religion. But if you're a Buddhist without beliefs, means you have some wrong views about Buddhism. So you need to go back and study it a little bit more thoroughly and practice them before making such a drastic conclusion. Because definitely Buddhism has lots and lots of beliefs, and most of them are very important features of the teachings and the practice itself. So with this, I will conclude here today, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm sure this will make you all to revise your perception and your practices a little bit more holistically, without throwing the baby with bath water, as some people tend to promote, as you can practice Buddhism without following any of the traditional beliefs, and then and a cut and paste as you like. I don't recommend doing that. I definitely say that you should study a little bit more thoroughly before reaching to such a conclusion. If people are thinking Buddhism is just for me and this life and just for this body, that's not Buddhism. Buddhism talks about for the sake of all sentient beings, for the future, for the benefit of others. These are the main purposes. So the very motivation of the practice, if one is doing for me, for this life alone, because I don't believe in future lives, and if that's not Dharma, that's just whatever it is. It is that. It is not Buddhism. With Buddhism, so it's very important to make this clear to oneself. There's nobody arm twisting anybody to follow Buddhism. Most Buddhist teachers would actually even check, even say, "Oh, I want to become Buddhist." They would say, "Are you sure?" We will say, "Are you sure? Are you ready?" We would never say, "No, you have to practice here. You can't join us unless you have become Buddhist." Nobody does that. So therefore, there is no need to brand oneself Buddhism without following Buddhism without beliefs, because there is no such. It is basically wrong view, full stop. Thank you very much, everyone. We do the dedication merits. That's one of the Buddhist beliefs. Salam Bodhi Cheda Cheba Vedanaya Raza Ve Has been Bomeding Freely Vedadi Thank you, everyone.